On May 22nd of 1984, I was born, and my full given name is Kieth Allen Crossley. The middle name Allen comes from my uncle Todd, whose middle name is also Allen. Some things you may want to know about me is that I grew up in a small town in Texas, very poor town, white trash town. And in that town, I had a great upbringing, playing in the woods, mudding on four-wheelers, all of the things you can't do with city life. Some other things you may want to know about me is that I'm married to a Welsh woman named Rhiannon. She has a very funny accent. For example, she says years instead of ears. Years. I have 4 children, 3 boys and 1 girl. The littlest girl is only 2. Her name is Lizzie, and she's my favorite out of all of them. That's Daddy's heart. Some other things you may want to know about me is that I'm a businessman. I own a few restaurants here in the local area. Some other things you might find interesting is that I do model cars for a hobby. I like to wakeboard, I like to dirt bike, I've been skydiving, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie like Bart. But at the end of the day, some of those things you may have already known, and some of them you didn't. But the real question is, are any of the things that I just told you actually about me? I'm going to present a challenge to you today, and here's how it goes. I want you to imagine you need to describe yourself to a group without using any references to your appearance, to your accomplishments, to your past, to your family, to your hobbies, to your personality. How many would struggle to do that? Now we know who's having an identity crisis but doesn't know it yet. If you can't describe yourself without using any of those references, there's a very good chance that you actually don't understand who you are at the most fundamental level. What is it that actually makes you you? So ask yourself some questions. Who would I be if I had been born into a different country? If I had been born into a different set of parents, different culture, different set of circumstances? What would still be the same about you? Better question. What was there on the day that you were born, likely before, and what will be there on the day that you die, and likely after? What is it about you that existed before you had any education, before you had any experience, any knowledge, before you had anything happen to you in life? What was it that made you you? You see, as adults, what we do is we put on all these layers of everything that we think that we are. We give ourselves labels and titles like businessman. We describe ourselves by our hobbies and our personality. But are all of those things actually the core of who we are? That's what I want to talk about today. That's what I'm interested in. What I believe has to happen is a process of losing yourself to find yourself. How many of you ever heard that phrase before? Does anyone feel like they have a good idea of what that actually means? Lose yourself to find yourself. In summary, before we begin, what it means is letting go of all of the things that you think that you are in order to reveal what is left over. All of the parts of your identity that you've accumulated as you grew up and became a teenager and as you became an adult. But all they were was layers, additions, but they weren't the core you, the real you. So what we're going to do today is uncover that and figure out what's beneath all those layers. Let's start with an easy one. Letting go of something that you are not. My dad, Michael, is an ER physician. He's been a doctor now for almost 30 years. People even only know him as the name doctor. So is his profession somehow synonymous or tied to his core identity? Well, obviously not, right? Because he wasn't always a doctor. He may not be able to practice in the future, so if he somehow lost his medical license, does my dad as the person cease to exist? Of course not. So his job clearly is not part of his core self-identity. So your job is merely what you do for work. It has nothing to do with who you are at your core. So let's move on to another easy one. My sister Brittany and her husband lost everything that they owned about 2 years ago. Hurricane Harvey flooded their house and they had water coming up over their kitchen counters. They tried to save everything, but the water kept on rising. They literally lost everything that they owned. So the question is, when something disastrous like that happens, financial ruin, natural disaster that destroys everything you value in a material sense, have you lost yourself? Are you still in there? There's something inside my sister and inside her husband and her children that Hurricane Harvey couldn't take away. So clearly our material possessions can't have anything to do with who we are at the core. We can all agree with that so far. Let's talk about appearance. So when you wake up in the morning and you look in a mirror and you see yourself, right? But what happens if tomorrow morning you wake up and you don't see yourself? That happened to a military man in the Marines called Merlin German. He was deployed to Iraq in 2001. He was sitting atop of his Humvee, manning the machine gun tower, when they ran over an IED bomb. In a split second, he was engulfed in flames from head to toe. He went into a coma for 6 weeks, and he woke up in a hospital in San Antonio, Texas, in a burn unit. Imagine what he had to see when for the first time he looked in that mirror, and he expected to see Merlin German, but he didn't see Merlin German. He saw something, someone, completely different. The image of who he thought he was had been completely destroyed. And yet, something about Sergeant German was still very much the same. Even though he visually looked different, something inside of him had not changed. It was something that the fire couldn't destroy. So the question is, what is that? So now we've gone and we said you can't be your job, that's not a core part of your identity. You can't be your material possessions, that can't be either. You can't even be your appearance. So you see how we're stripping away the layers of what we think we are. So then you say, well, Keith, I'm with you so far. Here's where I'm going to test the limits. Are you your personality? So you say, if anything was going to be part of me, that's embedded in my very being, it would have to be my personality. Let's question that a little bit. Susan Glenn's sitting in the back here today. Susan, I don't believe you when you say this, but I am told that you were incredibly shy as little as 5 years ago, and that Toastmasters for you was a complete reversal of that process. Now you've learned how to become incredibly outgoing. So the question is, which one of those traits was the real you? The shy part of your nature? Or having overcome your fear and had courage and become outgoing, which one is you? Interesting. Have you ever had a friend that was really serious, that had something dramatic happen and life shook them up and they woke up and realized what mattered and loosened up a little bit? Or have you ever had someone who went through a traumatic event that was once the life of the party, but after that traumatic event completely changed their personality? You see, we like to think of our personalities as hardwired. It's embedded into the very fabric of who we are. And yet, I'm not the same as I was when I was a teenager. And I'm willing to bet I won't be the same even when I'm 70 years old. So personality is even a very fluid concept. And what part of my personality is a byproduct of my parents, the way that I was brought up, their expectations of who I needed to be? And had I been adopted or been born into a different family or a different culture, my personality itself would be completely different. So even personality isn't an integral part of what makes us us. So then you say, let's go to something else. Your physical body, right? I can touch this arm and I can touch this leg. It is mine. It must somehow be a part of who I am. Do you mind coming up for a minute?
No, you're making me cry.
Okay. Even better.
I don't know why
Okay. What we're going to figure out here is where you are inside this body. So I want you to pretend that I have a saw in my hand, and we're going to start down at your feet. And I'm going to start cutting off limbs. Then she's not going to feel any pain. And what I want her to do is to tell me when I have cut out the part where she resides, where she is. So let's say that I take off both of your feet. Are you still in there somewhere? Okay? Let's say that I chop you off from the waist down. Are you still there? What if I chop you off from, say, the chest level down? Still there?
Yeah, but you can't take my heart.
Well, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to show you why. So she said that who she is must have something to do with that heart of hers. Right? It's probably something many of you in this room believe. But let's suppose that you had a heart problem, Marianne. Let's suppose that I took Marianne's heart, we did a heart transplant. We put it into your body. Would Marianne emerge from that anesthesia? Or would you still be in there?
I would still be here.
So even with a different heart, Ariane would still be in there. Interesting. So now what we've done is we've isolated where you are somewhere probably north of here, right? Which would, in deductive logic, would tell us that that must mean that you are where? In your head, right? Go ahead and have a seat. So, the question is, if you're not any of those things, including that body of yours, and we're isolating where you are, you must be the thoughts, right? That brain that's always talking, the voice in your head that's always speaking. That has to be who you are. Let's test that theory. Mike, come on up. I've got 3 objects here. A pair of scissors, a shoe, happens to be my daughter's, and a water bottle. The question, Mike, is I want you to pick out which of these 3 objects is you. Not represents you, not symbolizes you. Which one of these 3 objects is you? Don't know? Do you know, are these, how do you know they're not you?
I don't know. I don't know where you're going.
Okay. Good question. Okay, the question is, if this water bottle is over here and Mike is over there, is this water bottle Mike? How do you know? It's separate, right? He's over here and the water bottle's over there. So if that's true of the water bottle, it must also be true of the shoe and the scissors. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you, Mike. What I want you to do is close your eyes for a minute. And I'm going to ask you to picture the 3 objects you just saw. First, I would like for you to picture the shoe. My little baby girl Lizzie's shoe. Everybody got it? Keep your eyes closed. What I want you to do is let that image in your mind go, and I want you to replace it with the water bottle. Everybody got the water bottle in their mind? Okay, I want you to let that image go, and I want you now to replace that picture with the pair of scissors. Okay, everybody open their eyes. How many of you were able to see the images in your mind? Everybody? How many of you were able to let the images go? The question becomes, who is the one who is aware that there is an image? Who is the one who is seeing what is going on in the mind? In the exact same way that Mike was standing there and the water bottle was here, in your mind, the bottle is here, and you're sitting back here, watching it. Which means that you are separate from all of the images and all of the voices inside your own head. So the question becomes, if you have a thought that says, I should go volunteer at the homeless shelter, it's this noble, wonderful thought. And then 2 seconds later you think, man, I would love to run over my boss with my car. Which one of those 2 thoughts is you? Neither. Because you are the one who is observing the 2 thoughts coming across the screen of the mind. You are also the one who is deciding which of the thoughts to latch onto and which ones to let go of. In the very same way that you were able to let the bottle go and replace it with a shoe, let the shoe go and replace it with a pair of scissors, who is the one who is in control of the mind? Who is the one that's in command of the thoughts? Who is the one that is aware that the thoughts even exist, that the voices are talking in there? That is what it means to lose yourself, to find yourself. It is letting go of everything that you thought that you were, and every thought that you have that you believe is you talking in there. And recognizing that the true self is the one watching the mind, the one who is aware of the voices, the one who is aware of the thoughts and aware of the emotions. So the next question must become, if we've isolated it down to the one, you're the one who's observing, what is that person or thing or entity actually like? Does it have characteristics? Does it have traits? What are you, as the core you, actually like? There's a way to find out. Meditation is something I've been doing for a year and a half, and there's a specific type of meditation that is very revealing about self. It's the process of getting to an absence of thought, meaning there are no thoughts going on in the mind. That shows you two things when you reach that level. Number one, if I don't have any thoughts, but I'm still aware that I exist, I must have isolated the self. And it exists without having to think. Interesting concept. So, when you reach the place where there's an absence of thought, what you will find is absolutely nothing. But it is the most beautiful, peaceful nothing you have ever experienced before. And what you will find is that when you stop thinking, there's no anxiety, there's no fear, there's no worry, there's no judgment, there's no competition. All of the things you've experienced as a human being don't exist when you stop thinking. When you do that and you fully let go, something magical happens. When you let go of all the things that you thought that you were, and you lose track of time, and you lose track of worry, and you lose track of your body, you fully let go, in that nothing you will find the most overwhelming kind of love you have ever experienced. And that kind of love is the recognition that who you are is a being who is completely whole. You have no insecurity. You have no need to prove that you're good enough. You have no fear. You are whole and completely perfect just as you are. You don't have to try to be that way. You just are. And when you experience that kind of love, at the level of your true identity, it changes the way you see other people. No longer do you see the behaviors that bother you. You see past it. Because if that's what's deep within my soul and my core being is a beautiful love, it must be what's in yours too. And yours, and yours. That love makes every other love I've ever experienced in my life feel like a counterfeit. Like a dilution of love. Like a shell of what it's actually meant to be. And that was what was there the day that I was born. Before I had any education. Before I had any knowledge. Before I had any experience. Before I became all the things I thought I needed to be. That's also what was there for you on day one. And when you get in touch with that, you let go of all the other identities that don't matter anymore. And you realize that love is all you were meant to give. Because it's actually all that you are. Thank you.